Dave, I will in just 1 second. We're going on to live stream right now on YouTube.
Okay. And if everybody else will mute, and then when it's time to speak, either unmute, or if you just tap your space bar for an instant, you will unmute for a short time.
Okay, I just, dang.
Okay, we're recording and we're live on YouTube,
Okay, should I start over?
if you don't mind.
Okay, call to order the September 24th meeting of the Board of Trustees of PARTA. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating in this Zoom meeting, and happy autumn to everybody. We'll start with a roll call and ask Marcia to call the roll, and each person respond with the agency that appointed them.
Ms. Beck,
Karen, unmute.
Okay, where's City of Kent?
Thank you.
Ms. Biergard,
Present, City of Aurora.
Mr.
March.
Brockett,
Okay.
Mr. Brockett,
Mr. Brockett, please unmute when you respond. Hit the space bar. He is here.
Mr. Childers,
Present, Portage South.
Ms. Davison,
Here, Ravenna City.
Mr. Ginn,
Here, Middle Portage County.
Mr. Lewis,
Here, Ravenna Township.
Mr. Murphy,
He was here.
Jack, unmute for a minute while you respond. Either hit, there you go.
okay, we can see he's here.
Okay, he is responding.
Ms. Tipton,
Present, City of Kent.
Ms. Wise,
Karen Wise, City of Ravenna.
Mr. Woods,
Statesboro.
Sam Ryan,
Present, Claudia Amrine, PARTA, General Manager.
Ms. Beba. Present. PARTA. I'm present. Ms. Jurish. Present, PARTA. Mr. Markey,
Justin Markey from Etzel and Andrus, legal counsel for the board, present.
Ms. Schrader. Present, PARTA. Mr. Troutman.
Present, PARTA.
Thank you. We have a quorum present. We'll move on to the meetings of the August 27th meeting. They have been distributed to everyone. Would somebody make a motion that they be approved?
I do. Marge,
I'll second.
March moved and Karen second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, unmute yourself and say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Please say no. Thank you. Because of the COVID-19, there is not any guest communications, so we'll go to the general manager's report. Claudia?
Thank you. We're trying something a little different tonight by speaking from the podium. So we hope that you can hear us all better when we're addressing the board through this virtual meeting platform.
Good. You look very official.
Oh, good. Yeah, I don't need that. Okay. So I do have just a few updates that were not in my board report. First, I would like to introduce Justin Markey to the board, who some of us have met Justin. Glad to have you on board, and he will be giving a presentation at some point during our meeting tonight. So welcome, Justin.
Thank you.
Yesterday, we learned that Franklin Township has appointed R.T. Mansfield to replace Tim Lassen on the board. Tim, as you know, resigned a few months back due to health issues. RT previously was on our board as the appointment from Brady Lake. And when Brady Lake dissolved itself as a village, that seat went away. And so now he was interested in being reappointed through the township. So we will welcome him back next month. There is one additional resolution that we are bringing forward tonight that was not included in my board packet. We did discuss it with the Finance Committee, and after all of the work and the discussion and the focus last month on getting the resolution passed so we could order 3 buses, we hit a roadblock on that due to the ramping down of production by Eldorado National. This is related to COVID issues and workforce issues and suspension of large bus order issues. So those 3 buses that we had intended to order in September, we got to sit down together as a team on Monday and discuss our options, and have decided that the best course of action is to issue a new RFP for the bus for a 5-year contract. These would have been the last 3 buses ordered off of a 2016 contract. We'll take the time for the rest of this year to rewrite the specs and update those specs to include enhancements now that we need for COVID, and issue that. The target date will be January of 2021. So we will just postpone that somewhat. The buses that we expected to have delivered yet this year, the 4 clean diesel, will be delayed until at least March. And so Brian and his team will be managing, keeping those on longer time before we retire the buses that we had intended to. And then one thing to clarify in my board report, Karen asked a very good question ahead of the meeting, and I think it's worth noting. Middle of the page under OTP2 funding, I noted that we have been awarded $485,800. $400,000 of that is for a commercial driver's license training pad, which will be on our property, a pad large enough to do all the maneuvers required for operating a bus safely and getting a Class B CDL with passenger endorsement. Right now, we do that across the street at the Kent State Stadium, and it's not our property. If they were to decide to do something different with it, we've always felt a little vulnerable. So this will bring that right onto our space. But what I want to point out is that the other $85,800 is noted as going towards 5 light transit vehicles. If you do the math, that doesn't make a lot of sense because they cost more than that. But what that is for is local match, the 20% local match that we anticipated having to pay for the 5 LTVs that we ordered this past May. You might recall that RFP was pushed back because of COVID. We awarded the contract in May, ordered those 5 buses, and would have had to pay $85,000 in local match, but for the OTP2 funding that the state is awarding us. So that's my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Claudia, would you want to mention the 2 awards that we got from the auditor's office, the award we get every year for clean audit, and then the other one, which is the highest achievement award, which is very special?
Sure. Yeah, every year, as you know, Rebecca and her team in finance coordinate our annual state audit, and it is an activity that involves all of the departments, but keeping all those numbers straight is well within Rebecca's oversight, and they do a very good job. The auditors always commend the department for how they keep track of the public funds. This year, there was a new initiative to rate public agencies on their transparency and their compliance with sunshine laws. And you'll see in the packet that we did get the highest 4-star rating in the STARS system for open government and sunshine law compliance. That means that we go beyond what is required to make sure that individuals and that we keep the records we need to keep, that we retain them for the amount of time we're supposed to, and that the public has access to them in a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Claudia regarding her report? Okay, thank you very much. Then let's move on to the committee reports. The administration committee did not meet. Mike, I'll call on you for the finance committee meeting.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Finance Committee met on Tuesday and went through all the documents that Marcia was kind enough to send out to everybody ahead of the meeting. I'm going to hit some of the highlights and then open it up to questions, and I'll just go through the reports as they're sent out. Some of the highlights on the financial report: it was a strong month overall. We drew down $553,735 in CARE Act money, and we'll talk a little bit later about where that went. Sales tax revenues are still very strong, which is a good sign, bringing our total revenues for the month a little bit over $1,178,000. Couple that with the fact that our expenses were lower. The majority of that was due to salaries and wages, considering the changes that we've had with the routes and so forth. That is in line with that. A lot of that's the students in Kent State. So overall expenses were under budget, which brought the month up to $559,535, well above budget, mostly because of CARES Act. On the finance report, the money that we talked about being drawn down went between $33,600 to support vehicles, $56,600 to maintenance. Lion's share of it, $156,973 was to the bus storage, and $78,793 was to the AVL validators. Overall receivables were up. Moving on to the next report, a majority of that's Kent State. And account payables were up, and most of that's due to the bus storage invoices, a little bit over $258,000. Strong month. PARTA still looks very good. Surplus of a little bit over 3 million year to date. However, we did have some good signs from the Kent Gateway. 48% up from July. The hotel parking doubled from July. And although we're still in a pretty decent deficit for the year, it does show improvement and at least hopefully a trend moving in the right direction. And that's the highlights of the financial reports. The committee also discussed Resolution 2020-0801, which was touched on earlier by Claudia. And due to some technical difficulties, I think we all had our chance to chime in, and we are recommending that to the board at this point. And I would open up at that time to any questions.
Mike, did you mean Resolution 2020-0902?
Maybe I wrote the wrong one down. I apologize. The one that we spoke about in Finance Committee, and I maybe wrote the wrong one down off of the agenda. The one talking about what Claudia talked about earlier.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have it.
0902. Yeah.
My apologies. 2020-0902. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the Finance Committee?
I have a question.
Yes.
Was there any effect on parking deck usage, or were we able to see that during the street shutdowns where they had the picnic tables downtown?
I don't know if Rebecca, I haven't seen anything specific to that over than overall usage. I don't know how that would affect with the parking benches this time.
There was no ill effect from that. At this point in time, the evenings where they were doing that and the times they were doing that, really, we're not really back in full swing yet for that to have that big of an impact. You got to remember that the hotel and its revenue source to us is pretty much a pivotal point for us. So as the hotel ramps up, as does the parking for us as a whole, they're scheduling weddings again. They're getting vouchers from us on a regular basis again. As they start to ramp their services back up is where you're going to continually see us ramping up at the gateway.
Okay, thank you.
And David, one other thing that was on the Kent Gateway that I highlighted and forgot to mention, we do have a new line item. It's called second floor revenue, in which we collected $1,500 in a deposit for the second floor revenue or second floor lease that's with the city. So there's a new line item. We can't do anything with it, so it'll sit there until it goes back in the future.
Other questions, comments? Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate the time that you and the other board members put into that committee report. The operations committee did not meet. The personnel committee met twice during the past month, and I want to thank Marge and Richard for serving on that committee, and also Kelly for meeting with us. At our first meeting, we completed the review, and our primary job is to review the performance of the general manager, Claudia, and then also to compare what her report to us as to what she has done this year and see how that matches with our outline of the goals that she's had for the year. We met again on September 15th to have Kelly put all of that together, and we're really pleased. I think all of you will be happy to know that that we gave Claudia a 5-star rating. There are 5 areas where we need to evaluate her, and she came out the top in all 5 areas. Thank you very much. We appreciate her dedication, her commitment, and most of all, her leadership. And she would be the first one to say she certainly doesn't do it alone, but she has assembled a wonderful team and works well with them to perform all the activities that are done at PARTA. We appreciate that very much. Because she's in the middle of a multi-year contract, it was not necessary to review her contract at all unless we wanted to make any changes, and we all were happy with the contract the way it is and willing to move on. So thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you for the people who worked on the committee. This is a real pleasure committee to be on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any old business that anybody knows of? If not, let's go to new business, and happy to introduce Justin Markey from Roselle and Associates, who's going to talk with us about his role and our role important role as board members. Justin.
Thanks, Dave. So, Dave mentioned my name is Justin Markey. I'm an attorney at Retzel and Andrus. I've been an attorney since 2006. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Poland, Ohio, so Mahoning County, and lived there through high school, where I met my current wife, who's my only wife, who's my high school girlfriend. So we were high school sweethearts. And so we both graduated from Poland Seminary High School. I went to Ohio State. She went to the University of Akron. That was in 1999. 2003, graduated from Ohio State and came back to Akron, where my wife got a job as a teacher in Streetsboro. And so she was doing elementary education in Streetsboro. I went to law school at University of Akron, graduated in 2006. We eventually settled in Stowe and lived there till a few years ago before we moved to Hudson. So I have 2 boys, 10 and 12. And that's sort of where I just do a lot of sports, and I watch them during the day because the world's crazy right now, a few days a week, and just trying to plug along. So I was asked to give a little bit about my background. I did work with PARTA. I was trying to figure it out. Claudia and I were talking about the other day, going back to 2009 is when we first got engaged. And that was for what eventually became the NeoRide Council of Governments. And at the time, it was to spend in FTA grants on a transportation brokerage. The thought at the time was there'd be a software program for people to be able to buy, basically combine rates and fares amongst the different transit authorities to be able to travel outside of the jurisdictions. That eventually morphed into the Neo Ride with the, which you guys are still a part of. I assume it's still operating, correct, Claudia?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So I work primarily, I've been an attorney since 2006. I've worked with Retzel my entire career. I work primarily with local governments, and that includes transit authorities, port authorities, cities, village, townships, counties, school districts, all sorts of governmental issues. And aside from in this role, I'm currently the law director in the city of Norton in Summit County, and I'm a general counsel for the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority. So that's my background. I appreciate the opportunity to work with the PARTA board. As I said during the interview process, and I do believe I'm a big fan of efficient, well-working government. I think my job is primarily to make sure the board complies with state law and sunshine law requirements and your bylaws. My philosophy is that most issues that come up in meetings can be addressed if someone just raises the issue ahead of time. And so my hope is that if anyone has issues at any time, either put them through Dave to me or just reach out to me directly. And my hope is that whatever issue you have, we can get it addressed by the time the meeting happens to help things move smoothly. So to that end, I'll just, like I said, work with Dave and any committee chairperson to help identify those issues. I know in my experience, it seems like whether it's a council member, a board member, whatever that role is, there's nothing more frustrating because the way the boards move on their business, it typically is within the same meeting. There's nothing more frustrating than raising that issue during the meeting and not having it addressed, and then you feel like you got run over because the vote happened anyways. And so I want to make sure no one feels that way. So again, if you have any issues before the meeting's always better because you can address them ahead of time. So one thing, Dave and Claudia, and I guess I should ask, is there any questions for me as I gave my background, sort of my philosophy? I'm guessing not. Oh.
Justin, would you comment for a few minutes on the role of each board member and how important their role is in a board like ours?
Sure. So in a transit authority, and there are a number of local boards that are organized similarly around the state of Ohio. You know, the general manager does the day-to-day operations, but it's really the board, all the powers of the authority are executed through the board. So whether that's passing a budget, authorizing contracts, any to the extent you don't delegate it, otherwise hiring, personnel decisions, those are all supposed to be transacted through the board. Now, there's things you can delegate. There's day-to-day things that you expect Claudia and her staff to work on. But really that power ultimately, talk about checks and balances, we talk about a lot anymore in today's world. That's the checks and balances. You act as that legislative power. You are vested with the power by state law, and you're delegating it down to the staff to make sure they're achieving the functions and achieving the goals of the transit authority. Is that good, Dave?
Perfect. Questions from anybody? I know as we go through month by month by month, you'll get to know Justin a little bit better. I'm glad you know about his background and his sincere interest in helping us continue to operate as smoothly as a transit authority. Appreciate it. Claudia, did you have any other questions?
And if I ever talk too quickly, just tell me to slow down. I sometimes, once I get going, it speeds off and I can't stop it. So I will not be offended.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about the facilitating the meeting in terms of
Sure.
making a motion and the order of that and what to do?
Yeah.
We need to add someone to their roster to make a quorum.
What was that last part, Claudia? I didn't hear that last Clerk?
Sometimes we have joint committee meetings, or we
Yeah.
have a meeting where we have to add a board member to make a quorum. We've had some complications with combined meetings and with also making a quorum by adding a board member who's attending.
Okay, so, and we can, that issue, that last issue, I'll address at the end. I mean, it's probably better on a case-by-case basis to deal with that issue, and really just making sure, when I go through what the conduct of a meeting is, it all ties together. So starting back on the conduct of a meeting, you know, as the board may or may not know, you're governed by three things. One's the revised code, second is the bylaws, and the third is the Robert's Rules of Order. So the revised code set by the General Assembly, the bylaws adopted by the board, and the Robert's Rules of Order within your bylaws to anything that's not covered, you delegate that authority to Robert's Rules. So what helps run a meeting efficiently is, and I know you have a set agenda within your bylaws, is making sure you follow the order of operations within that meeting, and making sure that your chairperson or your president's following the process and following the agenda closely. So, Claudia, you mentioned that sometimes quorums can't be obtained, so you have to add members to committees at times.
Yes.
So really there, is that happening during the meeting? I should have asked ahead of time. Is that happening at the meeting, or do you know ahead of time, or what's the?
It usually happens as we're starting the meeting, and if someone has not shown up, or it didn't make it, then we look to a board member to serve in that person's absence.
In that capacity. And does, Dave, I should have asked ahead of time, I apologize. Do you attend most of the committee meetings?
Usually.
Just as to supervise?
And I encourage any board member can attend any committee meeting. And I think it's a good learning experience, and also to be available in case an appointed board member is not present. Somebody else could fill in as an official, I don't mean board member, committee member.
So under your bylaws, the president sets the committee, and then you're also a standing member of each committee. So I think it's okay from time to time, if you get in that situation where you have to appoint somebody, that would come from the board president, that appointment. So I would be very careful at the beginning of that to just make sure before the meeting gets started that or at the beginning of the meeting, the board president make sure to name that person either as a temporary member or a standing member of that committee. The other way to do it, as I'm thinking about now, is you could always designate any board member as an alternate for any of the committees, and that way whoever shows up, you can at least they're already appointed ahead of time. So that's maybe something to think about as a way to cover that. Not that everyone wants all those responsibilities, but at least may help with that quorum issue. All right. So do you want me to talk more about the process of the meeting, or is that really what we want to cover tonight? I don't want to go too long. I don't want to bore everybody.
Yeah, I think a little bit more about the process, and then just
Sure.
a reminder about the public nature of the meeting and what that means in terms of how we have to run it and record it, and right now broadcast it, and keeping to our agenda while we're conducting that meeting.
Yeah, I think from a as I mentioned before, I like to make sure that meetings run smoothly. They are, at the end of the day, this is a business meeting. So the board is the committee should be for most of the discussion. That's, you can't discuss things at the board level, but the board should be run like a tight business meeting. There's a reason why the agenda for the board meetings are set in your bylaws, because it's important. And that's for most organizations, it's important to stick to that agenda. All meetings, as Claudia mentioned, as you know, are open to the public. They're televised, they're published. So in order to make sure that you're doing things in the best interest, because again, as a trustee of PARTA, you're a fiduciary to the entity. you're acting as a fiduciary capacity towards PARTA, you want to make sure you're following that agenda, that your comments, and not that anyone would ever do something like this, but the comments stay to the business and not become personal, and that they really stick tightly to the topics. I think the reason that the bylaws defer to Robert's Rules of Order is Robert Rules of Order are really designed as parliamentary procedure to keep the meetings running efficiently and keeping it tight to the matter at hand. You know, the major things about Robert's Rules of Order from a policy standpoint, which again may be boring, but it's trying to protect the right of the majority to decide an issue, the rights of everybody to be heard on the board, and then the rights of your individual members. So by everyone following these rules and everyone following the procedure, you know, you make sure that's an enjoyable experience for the other board members, and you make sure everyone gets heard, and ultimately you come to a decision. The real thing in Robert's Rules of Order, which we don't have to get into too far detail, but everything's by motion, right? So you operate by motion, you operate by second, you have civil discussion relating to that motion only. Technically, you're out of order if you're not relating to the motion at the time. And then you have your vote. So by doing that, again, you can make sure you have an efficient meeting that's really just sticks to the business of the transit authority. Is that good?
That's good.
Okay.
Glad to have you on board, Justin. Forward to seeing you at every meeting.
Yep.
If there is no other business, let's go to resolutions. And the first one is Resolution 2020-09-01. The resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees honoring Brian Gray, board member, in appreciation for his dedication and service. I'm asking for a motion to accept.
So made, Mike.
Mike, a second?
Second,
I didn't see who it was.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? You have a copy of the motion. We appreciate the work that Brian has given us. There's no other discussion. We'll have a roll call vote. Remember to unmute, or I think it works to hit the space bar just to unmute briefly. I'm not sure. Marcia?
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Davison,
Yes.
Ms. Wise,
Yes.
Ms. Tipton,
Yes.
Mr. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Brockett,
Yeah.
Mr. Childers,
Yes.
Ms. Biergard,
Yes,
Mr. Ginn.
Yes. That motion passes. That resolution passes. Thank you. Resolution 2020-09-02. And this is a motion rescinding a previous motion, Mike, so we can see why there was a little bit of confusion there. This is a resolution by the Portage Area Regional Transportation Authority Board of Trustees rescinding Resolution 2020-0801, authorizing the purchase of 3 CNG 35-foot transit buses from Transportation Equipment Sales Corporation. We need a motion for that resolution to be approved.
I'll move.
And a second.
I second.
Claudia discussed this in her report. Are there any other questions at all? If not, then Marcia, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Childers,
Yes.
Ms. Wise,
Yes.
Ms. Beck,
Yes.
Mr. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Brockett,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Tipton,
Yes.
Ms. Biergard,
yes,
Ms. Davison,
Yes.
Mr. Ginn.
Yes. That motion is approved. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's a need for an executive session. Before we would adjourn, I would just like to point out the information that that Denise sent to us. The fear of public transportation got ahead of the evidence. I really appreciate the article is very good. Denise, I think the pictures from Barcelona and Madrid are wonderful, and wondered if you took those pictures. I'm thinking the answer is no.
Are you talking about the two articles that were included in the packet?
Yes.
Yeah, I stuck those in there.
Oh,
And I
okay.
did not go there to take the pictures.
Okay. Too bad. Okay, any other business to come before us? If not, we need a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
Motion.
Karen, second.
Second.
Debbie,
Yes.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. The motion was approved. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.